defined as acuteness of judgment and understanding. In this election year, our discernment should be in high gear. Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests and distinguished guests. I love reading stats in news stories. It is easy, however, to take surveys and polls at face value, but they can be quite important. They can be used to sway public policy and public opinion. So today I want to give you some ideas on how to look at these things with a more critical eye. This is a photograph from 1948. It's the newly elected President Truman holding up the front page of the Chicago Tribune, which just declared that he was defeated. So, I've got my result. The Tribune was on a time crunch. It had to get to press. They, instead of waiting for returns to come out, they used a well-known analyst that used 3 polls to determine who the winner was going to be, and this is what he predicted, that Truman was going to lose. Polls, when you see a poll, you should ask yourself a few questions. Who says so? In other words, is it a reputable survey from a reputable source? What was asked, and who was asked, and does it make any sense to you? Polls use samples of a larger population to determine what that larger population feels about a certain question. It can be very accurate if the sample is a very good representation of the larger population. In this case, the interviewers for the 3 polls that was used had a lot of leeway in who they asked. Now, they had certain categories that they had to have a certain percentage of their subjects in, the demographics, age, sex, etc. But within those categories, they had a lot of leeway. And they didn't have a randomization app on their phones in 1948. And so this is what happened. The next slide I'm going to show you. But we're a lot better now, right? We're smarter, and we've got computers to crunch all of our numbers. Next slide I'm going to show you is from a survey from an organization called 538. Now these guys came about along with their man, Nate Silver, a couple of elections ago, and they amazed everyone about how accurate their predictions were. I can't say enough about Nate Silver's work. It's amazing. But this past March, they made a huge mistake. In the Michigan Democratic primary, they predicted that Sanders had less than a 1% chance of winning. Less than 1%. And you can see that Sanders actually won by 1.5 percentage points in the election. So, what happened? Well, there was probably a lot of things that happened. But the 2 big ones that they talk about are the fact that they underestimated the number of young voters that were coming out, and they underestimated the number of independents. Now they were counting on that there would be more young voters and more independents. They just didn't count on as many that actually turned out. You could bet that they're scrambling on figuring out the other reasons why. Now, this isn't a poll, but I find it to be a beautiful illustration of what happens when you have skewed samples. This was our primary this year. And the number of voters, a lot of people think that when you have a caucus, you don't have enough people voting for it to be significant. But that's not the case. 26,000 is actually actually plenty to represent the larger population. The problem is that the sample did not represent the population. Who goes to caucuses? Well, people who didn't have anything else to do on a beautiful Saturday morning, if you remember. People who are really into what, into the voting, and people who didn't work. So it was definitely a skewed population. So the mail-in votes, much bigger population. And so they had a smaller margin of error in the returns. But this still, I think, is a skewed population, because we knew that we were never going to use this, that it didn't count. So who went? Who went to vote? Who voted in this one? Well, people who didn't feel like their voice was heard in the caucus, people who just wanted to vote to find out what would happen, and then there's a bunch of people who did not vote, because why? Why bother with that time? I don't think that either of these samples is a good samples for what we have, which is kind of sad, because that's all we got. Now for something completely different. The Washington, D.C. has a football team called the Washington Redskins. Now, they've been under a lot of criticism lately and a lot of pressure to change their name, because Redskin is widely considered a slur to Native Americans. It's even in the dictionary that it's a slur. So the Washington Post did a survey. You gotta wonder why, but they did a survey with 504 Native Americans. Now there's about 5 million Native Americans in this country, and they have sample size of 504. Too small? No. I crunched the numbers. It was not too small. Now, when I did it with the 99% certainty, you will get the correct results within 5.3 percentage points. It means plus or minus 5.3. With numbers this high, it doesn't make any difference. So you look at this, and you gotta wonder, who did they ask? It just doesn't seem right. Did they ask, I don't know, Native American ESPN subscribers? I don't know. I don't know who it could be. And what exactly were the questions? I mean, they have a pretty nice range here. It looks pretty good. But what exactly? How were they worded? And you know that there's a bunch of Native American organizations that are asking just those questions and trying to find out. Discernment. Next time you look at a poll or a survey, I want you to ask those questions. Who says so? What did they ask? And who did they ask? And always, always, does it make any sense? I'm speechless.